Evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm back just to continue where we were. So we were just looking at the widget here, and what I noticed, just having a quick sneak peek at what I've just recorded, I have forgotten something, and that would be this little important object here. This is your anchor, and an anchor effectively deals with your orientation. So we are in a landscape at the moment. If I move into portrait, you'll see that my screen is obviously based around a phone, and the image hasn't moved. So if I just move that back into landscape, what I want to do is take my border, and I am going to set the anchor for the border to fill the whole screen like that, and you get these nice little corner things here. You might have spotted the horizontal bar also didn't move, and that's because it's anchored to the top left. So it's anchored up here, and when we change the orientation, it stays up there, which means it's staying where it's supposed to be staying. In our case, we want it to actually probably just move to the bottom, and hopefully we wouldn't. What we can do is we can state in the game that the orientation can't change for our screen, so this shouldn't be an issue really. But now you can see, just for reference, that it actually deals with the scaling very nicely. One of the it's a really nice feature of a widget. So let's just put that back. Okay. Right, compile and save, and we are in now our images folder. Okay, so I've got some images here, and this is just an image that I created a long time ago for an app that I put on the Google Play Store, and I can just drag it from here and drop it there. Okay, and with that I can go into my widget and select my image and change the brush of the image to be, and you can see that texture has automatically populated itself from the main menu like that. So now we get a better idea of what the buttons are going to look like, the text on the buttons and everything else with an image in the background. So we might want to start thinking about maybe I should have done this one before I built the buttons, but let's make the font a bit bigger. So 42 sounds good to me. Just type that in there, and here 42, and again 42, and obviously it's down to up to personal preference. You can see the grey is getting in the way there, isn't it? So let's put shadow offset. Let's bring a shadow in here, and you can't see the shadow at the moment because there's no colour to it. So we are going to give the shadow, we're going to remove the opacity. So let's do that for everything on here. Just get rid of the opacity. Okay, a little bit repetition, nothing wrong with that. Oh, that on the other hand was wrong. And we can smash that into key. Okay, just makes it a bit more visible. It's not perfect. We're using the default fonts and all sorts. We can do some. If you're good with graphics, I'm sure you've got some nice fonts and some maybe you could replace these for images even. Right. So going back, let's compile and save and return here. Okay. So one image is pretty boring. Let's copy some images and drop them in here. So in the same way I've done there. No, I don't want to overwrite that one. So I've got some other images. I've stolen these images from the internet. Please don't sue me. Alright, I've just hit the save button there, and it's told me that I need to save this because this is called Untitled at the moment, and I need to give it a name. So this is the map name actually. So it's called at the moment. It's called new map. Let's give it the name of my project, which is MP tutorial, like that, and that now is my map. Okay, and if I go into the content here, it's actually created a map level, and that's that's cool. If I wanted a different set of images or something, I could have a different game mode, and I would set up a different map for that, and then I can transition from this map to that map, and that would have different widget, or there's different ways you could set it up, but maps are like game maps really. But I've saved my project, and I can do a file save all as well, which is Control and S. There we go. So now let's look at something more interesting. So I'll come back into I'm back in the content here. I need a way of displaying this on the screen, because if I press the play button, I am in the game here, and there's nothing there, nothing to look at. Let's just do that as a separate window so you can actually see. So it's actually executing there with nothing on the screen, because there is nothing in the screen. That is just the that arrow there. So we need something to affiliate our start position with and our player with, so we're going to add a new blueprint, and the blueprint we want is a player controller. Okay, so I'm just going to call this with a capital P, player controller, like so, and I've called it that because there is already a player controller in the game. Okay, so don't call it player controller, because the one in the game is called player controller, and we won't know which one is which. So call it something other than my player controller. So my player controller will do, and we can double click this one here, and this is interesting, isn't it? Look, there's a little camera there. That's very cool. This is one of the things that really sort of inspired me in gaming. I never realised, I've played games for years, and I never really given any consideration to the fact that the game might use a camera to view something in front of it. And this actually is going to view our widget. This is what we want this to point at. Okay, and well, we're going to overlay the actual the camera with the HUD, with the widget, and it's actually going to point over here, and there's nothing there. So what we've got here is a viewport. This is where you would put your character in there, and we could probably add a character, and I won't do that, but and then add animations to, and just deal with his settings for our player. This is still a player, and we want to look at this event graph here, and we can deal now with the scripting for our player, and this is a really nice feature of Unreal Engine blueprint scripting. Just makes that entry point into programming so much easier. It just helps deal with that learning curve really. So the first thing I'm going to do is right click. Okay, so right click in the event graph and search for custom event like this, and you can see it's all filtered out, and it's found this add custom event function. We call it an event. It is a function, isn't it? I'm going to call this one client post login, because that's kind of the kind of thing that has happened. It's been kind of get called in any networking tutorials that I've watched, and see at the top of the screen here, what's happening is we've got a player controller here, that exists for whichever player logs in. Now, we're making a two-player game, so we're going to have more than one player. So which client is the post-login client? Well, we're going to use something in the engine that deals with multiplayer replication. So where we've got two instances of the same object or the same function, both clients will see that function. They'll both get a copy of it with their game. So which client is going to run this post-login function? We're going to tell it to run on the owning client. Okay, we want him to run it, not the so once a player logs in, we're going to tell him to run this. Okay, and we're going to tell him to run something to display our widget to the screen. Okay, so I'm going to create a new function here on the left hand side. So creating that function, let's call this setup the UI, like that, and that's renamed it here, and you can see that little purple node has also changed. And what I'm going to do in here is find out who my player is, and then tell them to display the widget which belongs to them, not the widget that belongs to the other player. Okay, so we're going to do a branch. Okay, and this is kind of an if statement. If something happens, then it's true. If otherwise, it's false. And we are going to look for is it the local player controller? So is this my controller? True or false? And then we're going to say, if I don't want to do anything if it's false, but I do want to do something if it's true. I am going to create a widget. So create widget, and I want this to be a class of my widget. Did I call my widget my widget? Yes, I did. So I'm going to create a widget called my widget, and that has changed the name of this create widget node. Okay, then I'm going to right click on the return value and promote to a variable. So this is returning a value, a variable. Now it's going to create a variable which is a reference to my widget that my player controller has created. Okay, I'm going to rename that so that I can reference it later, because I want to talk to this controller when I am dealing with one player or the other player, player 1 or player 2. I'm going to call this my I called it this for some reason. Call it HUD widget. You can call it what you want. You can call it HUD. You can call it my widget. Probably my widget would make more sense. And what we're going to do is we are going to take this widget and we're going to add to viewport. Okay, and it saw it. So sometimes you have to untick the context sensitive button, but in this case it looks like 4.11.2 knows that I am adding a widget. So I'm going to add to viewport and drag this and connect this together. So I'm adding this widget to my viewport, and I think I can do that and not worry about too much more. So I compile that and save it, and then I go back into my event graph, and I've got this setup UI function that I've created, and I'm just going to pull it over here and drop it on the screen like that. No typing any code, just drag and drop like so. Okay, so that kind of sums that up for the controller. That's all the code that we're going to need for this controller at this point. I don't think I need to put a reference to myself there, so I'm just going to leave that as it is. So we'll save it, and we will close, or just remind ourselves, this is called client post login. I'm going to close this. I'm going to go back into my tutorial, and now I've got a player controller, all that's set up. I need to, at the moment, I'm not actually running that function, so that function doesn't execute automatically. What I do need to do is create a new blueprint, and this blueprint is going to be a game mode blueprint. Okay, defines the game being played, its rules, scoring, and other factors of interest. It is only instanced on the server and will never exist on the client. Okay. This is my game mode. Okay. Again, game mode exists as a class already. So call it something other than game mode. Call it my game mode, just so that you can find it, and we will do that in a second. So let's double click that and open it. Again, we've got this viewport and the event graph, and we're going to go straight into the event graph here. I don't need these kind of default nodes. I am going to find another function. It's another event actually. This one is the event on post login. So this is not a custom event. This is actually an event that deals with this server creating a player. Okay, so a notification that a player has successfully logged in and has been given a player controller, and these are kind of the process that the game engine uses or runs through as it's kind of initializing itself and giving, setting up the screen for the player. Right, so okay, I've got this like little node in here, so new player controller. I am going to do a cast. Okay, so we've got a player controller called my player controller. So if I cast to my player, and you can see that I can actually cast to my player controller here, and this is, instead of casting to the player controller, which is the default, I want to cast to something where I've actually put some code in. So this is basically a way of calling a function that exists in a different blueprint casting. Okay, and the function that I want to call, believe it or not, is the client post login, and there it is. So I'm calling a function that exists on the player controller. Okay, and it's got that little event logo at the top left just to indicate that this is a function. Remember, we set that to only run on the owning client, so that has actually picked up the details from that controller. So now I can close this blueprint. I'm finished with it. I can go back to my main screen, and if I press the play button, guess what? We'll get a black screen. We'll get nothing on the screen, and we won't see anything because we have to override our default game mode. So if I just take you into project settings here and look at maps and modes, our default game mode is game mode. Okay, and the default game mode has a default pawn, a default player controller. So these are the defaults that I was talking about earlier. And what we want to do is set it to use our game mode that we've just created, and we want to then, this is like why we have a game mode, we can tell it which classes we want to override. We don't want to use the default player controller, we want to use the my player controller. Okay, and we could only do that because we used my game mode, not the default one. Okay, and because I've done that, while I'm in here, I'm just going to set my editor starter map to be the MP tutorial and the game default map to be the same. We may change that later on. Okay, this is automatically saved, so I don't have to worry about that, apart from the fact that it's not, because look, There we go. Let's set my game mode there as well in the world settings. If you don't find that, you have to go into window and world setting, and that should be ticked, and that will present this one here. So I'll just demo that one. Windows, world settings, that appears here. We check my game mode, and it should then be my play controller. So now when I press the play button, voila, we have this wonderful view of what our game screen, our main screen is now going to look like. So this is the camera actually being drawn on the back of the screen. I need to set the mouse here, so it's actually showing this in the background, but because we've kind of obstructed the view with our image of Stampy, and we get our buttons, and these buttons are all probably working. It'd be nice if we could actually see our mouse. We can change that. Oh, come on, let's close it here. So we can set the mouse to be right. Yeah, let's fix that in a minute. Right, so I'll just cut that there. I'll go and figure out how to fix the mouse, and then I will come back and we will look at the next part of our code. We'll play a bit more with the HUD and start building the multiplayer logic in a game state. Okay, so save your project, and I'll see you in the next video.